genre.
The Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who, The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review, discuss, and recap every episode of Doctor Who, one Doctor at a time. I'm Nick Jimenez.
I'm Cassandra Fredrickson.
And I'm Scott Corelli.
And today on the show we'll be discussing the Daleks, the first Doctor's third story.
Welcome back, guys. We're in our third season of The Long Way Around. Congratulations, everyone. And we're talking about the Daleks, which do some background on this story. So a lot of the background is covered in the first Doctor TV movie that we watched and talked about.
Yes.
We talked about how Sydney. I've just got text to scroll through it. Sydney Newman. Sydney Newman, who was played by Brian Cox in the movie, how he didn't want bug-eyed monsters in Doctor Who. And then the second story out the gate is bug-eyed monsters, and he was really upset about it. Mm-hmm. So that was basically all we knew about the Daleks in that story. But there's a lot more. Because, okay, so first of all, this story was somebody that the script editor, David Whitaker, he was trying to get this guy who was a comedy writer named Terry Nation to write a Doctor Who story. And at first he wasn't into the idea, and then he had this crazy idea for a series called The Survivors. And so they went ahead and commissioned it. And then they turned the title of the episode into The Mutants, which is what technically the story is called. It's technically called The Mutants, but everyone refers to it as the Daleks because there's a third Doctor story called The Mutants.
Right. And it's terrible.
And as terrible as it is, you can't argue that it's called The Mutants. And these stories back then, I mean, in the first Doctor era, they named every episode rather than the story. So so it was all kind of ambiguous anyway. So everyone just sort of retroactively started referring to this story as the Daleks.
Yeah, for our listeners' sake, after the theme music, there is no title card like we've grown used to. It's like we fade open and then we see a title card that says the Dead Planet. Not
right.
The Daleks Part 1. It's just the Dead Planet and then the Survivors and the Raid or whatever.
Right. So he went to work on that. It was intended to be the fourth adventure of the season following Marco Polo. However, the second story, which was going to be written by the same guy who wrote the opening story with the cavemen, he kind of sucked, as it turned out. He was not great. They were not happy with how the cavemen turned out, and they did not like the BBC.
Who was really?
Oh, yeah, right. So they didn't like how that turned out, and they weren't liking his scripts for his follow-up story, and so they fired him and moved up the Marco Polo to third, and then moved up the Daleks to the third story. But then the Marco Polo script wasn't finished yet, so then they swapped them because Terry Nation wrote the Daleks really, really quickly. And originally it was only commissioned as a 6-part story, and he asked for an additional episode because he couldn't stop his idea train. And that is Terry Nation to a T.
Yeah.
you cannot stop this guy's ideas, whether or not the scripts are good. You can't stop his ideas, and he's written a lot of insane episodes. This is probably the sanest episode that he's ever written for the show.
Kind of unfortunately.
Yeah, most of the time his episodes are
Like
bonkers.
yeah.
Yeah, just completely bonkers. So then a couple of things that were changed. The bomb that goes off that has sort of like wiped this planet was originally done by a third party who would show up and be like, oh, sorry, I really screwed up your planet, guys. And it was going to be sort of this thing where the Thals and the Daleks hated each other because they thought the other one destroyed the planet, and then it ended up being this third party that shows up and is like, actually, awkward, sorry, it was us. And then the Daleks were like sort of kinder, like you kind of understood their reasoning for wanting to destroy the Thals was that they didn't want to be in another war, so they thought, well, if we want to avoid war, we just kill all the Thals and then there's no war. Like it was like
Oh my God.
it was like a real it was like a real sort of like Vulcan sort of way of looking at like a logical way to stop war.
Oh God, I just imagined like a Dalek on the bridge of the Enterprise with like a blue shirt.
It would be. I mean, there's comics that exist.
Captain.
Yes, but yeah. So they were sort of.
We have no cob, mate.
They were a lot more Vulcan-y originally.
Sure.
And they ran very much on logic and that sort of thing. And that
mine's
changed.
made one.
That changed because they only had time to design 2 creatures. They couldn't do 3.
Sure.
That was like too much. And a couple of other things, like there was a lot of like minor like set piece changes and things like that. Things like really random things like the Daleks were originally going to be powered by electricity, and the associate producer suggested that it be static electricity for some reason. I guess because that was a new idea at the time, and so
they can hug.
Yeah, so it just sounded, I don't know, more sci-fi or something.
Sure.
But
Dogs rubbing against each other to like move. I need to move. Rub me.
Well, I mean that's what we got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now here's where this bit is. And then the other bit, when they were filming the first episode, they filmed it once and they listened back to the tapes or the recordings, and they discovered that somehow the sound from the direction booth had been recorded directly onto the soundtrack of the episode. And so throughout the episode, you could hear the director giving direction to the camera people. And so they had to, like, all of that footage was wasted, and they had to reshoot all of it.
Oh, man.
Then the most interesting bit is that the original production designer had to step down because their availability changed at the last minute. And they were replaced by Raymond Cusick, who designed the Daleks and created the iconic Doctor Who villains.
Mm-hmm.
However, that production designer who was not available and would have been the designer of the Daleks had he been available. Do you know who that person was?
No.
Is it one of the Croft brothers?
No.
Okay.
It was none other than director Ridley Scott.
What?
Oh,
Yes.
I did know this. I think I heard. I heard that like Ridley Scott almost had something to do with Doctor Who at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Insane.
He was almost he
God,
was
how old was he?
hired.
Like 12.
Yeah, I mean he was young. He was probably in his early 20s. He was the person, the production designer hired to design the Daleks, and then the last minute he had to back out for some reason. It doesn't say why, and then was replaced by Raymond Cusick, and we got the Daleks that we got.
God, the director of the Counselor almost designed the Daleks.
Do you think he's like kicking himself for the past 50 years for turning that gig down?
I think he's fine.
Yeah, I don't.
But doesn't he
I don't
love
know.
Doctor Who? Like, isn't he a big
does
Doctor
now.
Who fan? Okay.
Yeah. Although as a fan of Doctor Who, I mean, I can't imagine the Daleks looking any other way.
Right.
Yeah, you know,
And-
yeah.
Yeah, and so like a part of me thinks that maybe Ridley Scott is glad that he didn't turn it, that he didn't do it, because then we got what we got, and that's how it should have been. You know. I don't
By
know.
the way, it makes absolute sense that Ridley Scott began as a production designer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Can you imagine if like H.R. Geiger had designed the Daleks?
I know.
They're just like wet and phallic and like
Yeah.
That's so gross. Oh well, I mean, it would have been within his his design sense, because I mean, if the Daleks are nothing else, they are very German.
that's true.
So,
So now I'm picturing like a Dalek and like lederhosen and like one of those little caps.
yeah. So here's then the ratings is another thing that I wanted to talk about, because
Sure.
they talk about the ratings a little bit on the in the movie, but it's important to know that the show was almost canceled at this point, and the first episode had 6.9 million viewers.
Oh,
Okay, but the second episode dropped. It went to 6.4, right?
okay.
But then, for some reason, everyone who watched it must have been talking about the Daleks, who were introduced in the second episode.
Yeah.
And the third episode went from 6.4 million to 8.9 million.
Holy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then the fourth episode, 9.9 million.
I love that. I love that. I'm just imagining like at the office on Monday morning. It's like, oh, you see, right? So I'm watching Doctor Who. I'm a kid. I cannot believe these weird trash can things just come at this. They're yelling all the time. I gotta see this. Yeah, there
And
they
then
are.
by the end of the serial, Doctor Who had an average viewer base of 10.4 million viewers.
wow.
Yeah.
How
How ironic that his greatest foe, the Dalek, is arguably the Doctor's biggest savior.
Yeah, totally. And then, of course, the last bit of information that I have about this was that the Daleks blew up and became really, really popular. And as a result,
They went on tour.
Well, no, I mean they did. That was the thing that happened. But
Wait, like, were they going like a Daleks out of their shells tour?
no. So two things happened.
Okay,
so
sorry.
one, the Daleks was by David Whitaker was adapted into a novel form called Doctor Who and an Exciting Adventure with the Daleks. And that was what are those called? Novelization. So it was a novelization of the story written by the script editor, David Whitaker.
Okay.
And he wrote that. It was the beginning of what would become an ongoing thing where every Doctor Who story would have a novelization and would then continue on past Doctor Who into original publishing, and eventually Doctor Who would publish over 500 novels.
Yeah. You can find them at a Barnes and Noble to this day.
Yeah, and so that was a huge thing because of this story, and then also this story, Whitaker adapted the story into a feature film called Doctor Who and the Daleks, in which the Doctor was replaced by a human inventor literally named Doctor Who, starring Peter Cushing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I didn't know that was Whittaker.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay.
This story was adapted and came out in theaters June 24th, 1965. And so like a year later, basically, year and a half later.
Have either of you seen that?
I haven't.
No, we're gonna cover it if we ever get to do a live episode of this show.
Oh, good.
For the patrons.
I really like the title Doctor Who's Adventure with the Daleks because it sounds like they're working together.
Doctor Who in an exciting adventure with the Daleks.
Like I'm just picturing like Romancing the Stone with like the Doctor swinging from a vine and he's like holding a Dalek.
I feel like that full title should end with Doctor Who in an exciting adventure with the Daleks on ice.
Oh my God. I'd pay so much money.
I know.
Welcome to Columbia.
Just the idea of like the Daleks on ice skates.
Yeah.
Also, originally, the original design for the Daleks, like to make them move around, was that they were going to build the Daleks around a tricycle chassis.
What?
So, like, the people inside the Daleks would just be riding around on tricycles.
Oh, that's delightful.
Yeah.
God. You could just tell me things about the Daleks forever, and it would just get more and more delightful.
I know. It's pretty phenomenal. So that's all the background I have for the Daleks. It's quite a bit. I think it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, they're these weird fat robot things that just they won an entire nation's heart.
Yeah, they yell a lot. So Nick, tell us about part 1, The Dead Planet.
I'd love to. So it kind of starts off kind of like awkwardly in media res, where they're like mid conversation, presumably just talking about how lame the cavemen were, and then it's weird. And so like they arrive in this like weird petrified jungle, and Ian and Barbara are like commenting on how interesting the flora is, and they're kind of not really aware yet that they're not on Earth. And then the Doctor kind of offhandedly makes a comment that the planet that they're on is like highly radioactive. And Ian and Barbara, well, especially Ian, doesn't take too kindly to hearing that, which is understandable. And then they come upon like a matte painting of a futuristic city that's like beyond the forest. And so Susan and the Doctor are like, well, that's kind of cool. Let's go see what that is. Let's go see what kind of adorable aliens are in that place. And and we'll learn later on that that futuristic city is actually none other than Dalek City. But Ian and Barbara in Dalek City, just Daleks with a little Dalek. You just see like Times Square, but just Daleks.
Oh my God!
Extra. Oh God. God, sorry. Anyway, so
God spreading the news. Dalek.
Hey, a lady tonight.
Oh my God.
Here come the sharks. These like Puerto Rican Daleks.
Oh no.
Okay, so Ian,
I just got the mental image of 2 packs of Daleks snapping at each other.
just in an empty alleyway. The Daleks are coming out of a playground.
Oh my God.
Oh boy. Crazy.
Daleks will never stop being funny.
Oh, they're amazing. So Ian and Barbara really want to go back to the TARDIS. So they're heading back. And then Susan, who is a foolish girl, becomes separated from the rest of the crew. And she gets like she thinks that she's like been touched by a hand comes out and touches her. But then when she catches up with everyone, she's like freaking out because like a human hand touched her, but no one believes her. So so they're like, yeah, you're just being silly. And then Barbara's like, hey, I think all that radiation went to my body. I don't feel super well. And then there's like a knocking outside of the TARDIS, and it freaks everybody out. But the scanners on the TARDIS show that there's nobody outside because they haven't seen anyone since they've arrived on this strange world. So Ian and Barbara are just not about this. They want to go back to England. And then the Doctor pretends to, like go along with it, but he's actually fooling them. So he like sabotages the TARDIS, which is really weird. And so it's like, oh, well, we need Mercury for the thing. So we have to go into that weird city and find some Mercury. And then, so the next morning, is this the scene where they eat breakfast?
Yes.
So Ian and Barbara are like, me hungry, doctor. And the doctor's like, okay, fine, what do you want? And she's like, Barbara's like, well, I'd like some bacon and eggs. And he's like, fine, bleep, bloop, bleep. And he like reaches into this little like furnace kind of deal, and he pulls out like 3 foil like bars. And then Ian and Barbara like take a bite out of it, and it's like an everlasting gobstopper where you can like taste like the eggs in one bite and the bacon in one.
That was the gum, not the everlasting gobstopper.
Oh, right, it was the gum. Wait, what was the gobstopper? You would suck on it, and it would never like
it would never shrink. Yeah,
never.
What did it taste like?
Like a gobstopper, I guess.
Citrusy. I don't know.
Just a jawbreaker?
Yeah, it's just a jawbreaker.
I was subbing for a class yesterday, and I had to watch the first 45 minutes of that movie 5 times.
Oh, wow.
Because like that's how long the classes were. So like I literally, as soon as he found the ticket, it was like time for class to end. I was like, it's not rewinded.
You were very familiar with the worst part of that movie.
Yeah. Your Majesty.
Oh boy.
The movie has a lot of weird jokes that kids do not get.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning after eating their weird breakfast, they emerge from the TARDIS and they find like a weird little box, and it has vials that are filled with this weird kind of like ambery liquid. And they're like, oh, it must have been whoever was like knocking on our door. They must have left these weird vials of amber liquid. So Susan puts the box back on the TARDIS for safekeeping. And then they decide to head off into the mysterious futuristic city. And it's built entirely of metal with doorways that are kind of like squat and round. And like, what kind of stupid creatures have to fit through these weird squat rounded doors? Oh, if only they knew. And so while they're doing that, they separate again, which is kind of weird. And Barbara is walking down like these weird metallic corridors. And then she finds out that she's like trapped. And then, I'm talking to the listeners now. Remember that scene in Psycho?
You weren't before.
Well, whoa! You just blew my mind. I've like always in my head been talking to you guys, but now I realize that makes 0 sense because you guys have seen all this.
Oh my god.
Okay. So it's like that scene in Psycho where like the shower or kind of like Halloween, where like the very beginning of Halloween. So it's like the POV of a Dalek's like weird plunger nose, and like so you see like the plunger and like the stock thing, and then Barbara is like pinned against the wall, and she does like a really great like B horror movie girl scream, and then we cut to black, and that's the cliffhanger.
Now I want to see a cold open where like a Dalek like puts on a clown mask and like kills his sister.
Oh my Michael, God. What are you doing?
Exterminate! No.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. So here's the thing that I really took away from watching this time. I really love this story a lot. And what's interesting watching it is that, like, at the time, obviously they had no idea about any of the things that I'm talking about. But
Sure.
when as fans, you know, we have to make sense out of all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find fascinating about this story is everything we know about the Daleks and the Time War and the Doctor. And this is the first time the Doctor has ever met the Daleks. He has never had an experience with them whatsoever. So is it possible then, or not is it possible, I guess, is the Doctor directly responsible for the Time War? Because he made first contact with the Daleks.
Yeah, in a way, he drew first blood, not them.
Yeah, right.
I guess so. But
yeah,
because this is like at the end of their timeline, kind of. So, like, how... I'm sure they go over it in other stories, but, like, how does that... Like, I don't know, time travel's weird. But you know what I mean? Like, how do they remember that the Doctor met them when they were all, like, dead?
Right. I don't know. Because the thing with the Daleks is that in these early stories, they keep thinking they're not going to bring them back, and then they keep bringing them back. So they have to, like, they kill them all.
Right.
And then they're like, LOL, there was more. There was a pocket of other Daleks. And they kind of keep doing that every time they come back. So I don't know.
So in a way, that was always part of the tradition.
Yeah.
Of like, psych, they're not all dead. There was like 8 left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm actually, like, so since we're kind of going into like overall thoughts, I was actually consistently impressed. And granted, we've only seen the first 3, or at least I've only seen the first 3. I was really impressed with how, you know, like in part 2, we're going to actually see the Daleks, and they look almost exactly like the Daleks that we see talking to Peter Capaldi. And, you know, you think back to like the first time that you met like Lex Luthor or like the Joker, and they're very different from like the characters that we kind of know and love now. But like they kind of were perfect out of the gate. Like, the voices, I mean, like, the voice is a little deeper and they're not quite as, like, manic, but, like, I mean, like, these are Daleks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I was really impressed with that. And it makes sense that they were so immediately beloved by audiences because, you know, there was no, like, like when you see Klingons in the original series and you're like, well, those aren't Klingons, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I agree. I find the idea that you know, having watched as much Doctor Who as we have watched, you know, seeing the Doctor not know what a Dalek is so weird.
It's kind of like it's like the Batman not knowing who the Joker is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
All
right, Cass, tell us about the survivors.
Okay. So while Barbara is kind of getting trapped by and threatened by like this Dalek,
the survivors, aka looking for Barb in all the wrong places.
Oh. Ian and Susan and the Doctor, they're like wandering and they enter this room full of like gadgets, including a Geiger counter for some reason. And they're just like, oh, look, we're past the danger zone. And so they definitely have radiation sickness.
An HR Geiger counter?
Haha.
Uh-huh.
Hello, everyone. It's me, HR Geiger.
I like
horrible little man.
I like the Daleks because they are phallic.
Oh my
Everything
god.
is penises in my world. I once worked on Alan Jodorowsky's Doom.
Oh my god. Oh my god. So they're like, oh, we have radiation poisoning. That sucks. So the Doctor realizes that he messed up. Like, he messed up big time. And he's like, hey, so I sabotaged the TARDIS and we need to leave now. Like, forget Barbara, we need to leave now. And
I'm not
Ian's
even
like,
entirely sure how she's my granddaughter.
Yeah. Well,
No, that's Susan.
That's
Barbara's
Susan.
Barbara's
Barbara's
the teacher.
the school teacher.
Right, sorry. Well, then double screw her. She's not even my kin.
Yeah. So Ian's like, no, because Ian loved Barbara. And so Ian kind of takes the piece to make sure that, like, the doctor, I don't know, like Ian's like.
This moment is really interesting to me because like Ian has to basically be like, I'm taking this and you can't go back to the TARDIS because I've got this thing and we're gonna go find Barbara and that's that.
Yeah.
And the doctor's like, all right. And what I found interesting about this was because that is not the doctor we know. The doctor we know would never leave someone behind,
Right,
on a strange radiation-filled planet. And
that he lied to.
Right. And we know, because later in the story, he's in serious danger of having radiation sickness and dying from it. And we know that he can die from radiation sickness because he does 2 other times. 3 other times? 3 other times. 3rd Doctor, 5th Doctor, and 10th Doctor all die of radiation poisoning.
Maybe that's why he was so pissed the 10th time.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And so my thing is, like, when this happened, I was like, I hate weird, inconsistent character stuff like that. Sure. And again, though, that's us knowing the Doctor's entire life story up to this point. But this Doctor comes, like, before they've written all that, so these people don't know anything. They're all, making this show on the seat of their pants.
right.
Yeah.
But again, as fans, you want it to all make sense. And I was just thinking about this moment, and I was like, well, the Doctor's never regenerated before. So maybe he's scared of dying.
I don't think this doctor is, like, our doctor yet, because my justification for, like, the companion is the most important character in the show instead of the doctor is because his companions make him, like, shape him into the character that we love today. Like, it starts with that crappy caveman story, but, like, because he's just some, like, old dude with his granddaughter. Like, it's kind of like Rick and Morty up to this point. Like, he's just like, whatever, just leave him.
Yeah, I mean, like, even the fact that, the companion is, like, calling him grandfather. It's kind of like Summer and Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like, he doesn't have a conscience yet. So I think he's more like other Time Lords that we encounter later on in the show, because they don't
kind of like blasé and
So I think that Ian and Barbara specifically like influence him the most. And so I would argue that, like, this doctor who's like, I don't want to die, let's just leave her, like, is not to where, like, the standard that we hold him to yet.
Yeah, because
right, of course.
He's not like a Jack Kirby cosmic guardian of all of space and time yet. He's just like a punk that stole a TARDIS and is now just going to enjoy riding.
Yeah, no, and I understand all that. I'm specifically talking about the fact that he's, like, really afraid of dying in this episode, and I'm like, throughout it, and I'm just wondering. Obviously they don't know about regeneration, the creators of the show at this point. But because we do, you want to make sense of that. And I just wonder, like, if the process of regeneration, when you've never done it before, I was just thinking about it. I was like, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with the way that the 10th Doctor kind of describes regeneration, where it essentially is like a kind of death, Yeah. And like, I've always inferred that that the Doctor stole the TARDIS as a young man. And so, like, to see him now as William Hartnell, it's like he sort of lived a full life.
Well, we know that he didn't steal it as a young man, because we see old man William Hartnell steal the TARDIS in Day of the Doctor.
Oh, okay.
Name of the Doctor. Name of the Doctor. Nope, it's in the show. It's continuity. You can't
Nah.
do that.
Nah.
You can't do that.
No, I will do it whenever I want to.
You can't. You can't. It's in the show. It's continuity.
It doesn't mean I have to like it.
Also, it wouldn't make sense for him to be much younger because he has Susan, and she's
That's
young.
true.
She's like supposed to be
But
12.
Time Lords can like age differently, because it takes like Matt Smith like 2,000 years to get to like what William Hartnell is.
I guess that's true.
I'm just
I hate to be like a kid for like 40 years. That would be the worst.
Yeah, it's like a prepubescent kid.
Oh God! Just imagine Adric trapped like
Oh
Adric.
my God.
Like,
Oh, well, that's hell.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm just kind of obsessed with. I mean, if like the part of this whole mythology that kind of excites, like my Clone Wars, I think is like I'm really fascinated by the idea of like young First Doctor and like what he was like, and so I like the idea of like him just being kind of like a bratty, almost kind of like a Peter Quill, kind of like, I'm the coolest Time Lord that I'm gonna do everything and I'm gonna steal this TARDIS.
Yeah, I know he. I like that, and I also like the idea of this guy. I think is it 11 who mentions this, where he's just like, like, oh, I was always back when I was young. I always acted old because I wanted to be more important than I was.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of like that too, like the idea that he's acting all old and wise, but it's like a coping mechanism for him not really knowing much about the universe yet.
Yeah, and then kind of and he has a reverse complex later on in his life when he's like an ancient being pretending to be like a young, hip, kind of bachelor. Right.
Because at that point he was on his last regeneration. I mean, we didn't know that at the time, but
sure.
But yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, yeah, that moment, just like I had a lot of thoughts about that particular.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it would be like if Batman was like ghosts, like,
yeah,
not Batman.
Come on, Superman, we gotta go.
Oh, I'm not going in there, Superman.
I'm afraid.
I'm afraid of dying.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Imagine if anytime anyone pulled out a gun, that's how Batman was like.
Oh, just no. Does like the Hanna-Barbera like shaking sound effect.
Yeah. It's like that bone rattling sound.
Yeah. Just jumps into Superman's arms.
Oh man. That's the Batman we deserve. So Ian takes this TARDIS part hostage, and it's like, you're gonna help me look for her or else. And so they leave the room, and we get our first like actual glimpse of the Daleks, because they like
hero
really cool.
shot.
Yeah, they're like surrounded by them.
Such a good shot.
And they like take them prisoner because it's Doctor Who, and Ian tries to run. But he's shot by one of them, and it's interesting.
How will you run when your legs don't work?
Yeah, they just paralyze him. They don't like kill him, which is interesting.
It's really weird that they don't kill Barbara, and B, like because Ian's like just like psych and just runs away, and the dog's like freeze and just like shoots him in the legs.
Well, they think that they might be Thals, and they're interested in that. Yeah, so they're just like, what? Living beings? What?
Yeah.
But we never see the paralyzed, like the phaser set to stun mode ever again, do we?
Well, no, because they don't ever care about keeping people alive ever again.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I forgot this was a thing, and I was like, oh no, Ian's gonna die. But wait, no, he's not. Like,
yeah,
they're just evil killing machines.
Yeah.
That would be cool. I would like to see the phaser set to stun thing happen again in the New Who. It's like the idea of a Dalek being like, shut up, and just just handicap someone for like 2 hours.
Yeah. But then the whole episode would be like, why are they keeping us alive? That would be like the entire plot of the episode of like, why would they do this?
We're trying something new. Daleks no kill.
Daleks just keep paralyzing people and putting them in the base of a Dalek because they need a new Davros.
Oh my god.
You're Davros.
A new Davros.
You're Davros. Papa.
Papa.
Just London is just like filled with people crawling on the ground. Why are they doing this to us?
Oh my god.
Must find Papa. Like if they don't fit in Davros's chair, they just kind of like throw their limp body just like out.
It's like
Next
a Cinderella story. The glass slipper.
Oh my god. It's like a Dalek wheelchair.
Oh man. Oh. Also, I love them calling Daleks strange machines. Because they don't know anything yet. And
Right.
It's like, oh, these weird robots. That's so awesome.
They know as much as we do when we first watched in our first Dalek story.
Right.
So
These robots are so mad.
They really want to find their pop.
Pop pop.
So the Daleks take them prisoner and they lock them up and they summon like the doctor and they ask him a bunch of questions and he's like, I'm not a Thal, I don't know what a Thal is. And the Daleks, they're like very forthcoming with like their exposition and their backstory. Yeah. Like they're just like, oh yeah, there was a war with the Thals and they like live out there in the forest and we assume that they are also mutated because of the radiation. And don't you know this stuff because you look like a Thal? And the doctor's like, no? Question mark. So the Daleks are now, in their Dalek-y prisons, I guess. And they just live in their metal city. And the doctor is like pleading with them and he's like, hey, we're going to die if we don't get medicine. And the Daleks are like, okay, cool. So they're like, okay, well, I guess you can go get drugs if you need it. So
we are a sensible race.
Yeah. So the doctor is passed out at this point. Like he goes back and they're like Ian's arguing with Barbara and Susan a little bit as to who's gonna go, but Ian is still paralyzed. So and Barbara's kind of like crazy too. So Susan is the only one who's well enough to go out. So she goes out back into the forest to get the vials of medicine that they found outside the TARDIS, and she wanders back into the forest and she's like scream crying, which is weird, and she's like followed by this figure, and the Daleks are kind of plotting and they're just like, well, when the girl comes back with the drugs, they're going to take them and they're going to leave the four of them to die because we need it. And Susan goes into the TARDIS, gets the stuff, and then she is the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is
the TARDIS doors open,
and then
the TARDIS doors open, and then she starts to walk outside. And that's
okay. Yeah.
There's also that really great moment where because Ian's legs don't work, and so they have to send Susan. And there's this bit where after she leaves with the Daleks to head for the TARDIS, Barbara's just like, I can't believe you did that. He's like, what choice did I have? And he just starts punching himself in the leg. Damn you legs, why won't you work?
Oh my god, I forgot to talk about my favorite part in the first episode is when Susan is looking at that flower And she's like, I want the flower. And Ian's like, oh, let me help you. And he like picks it for her and it's so gentle. And she's like, I'm going to keep it forever. And then Barbara starts screaming because of that weird metal armadillo. And Ian just kind of like smashes it into Susan's hands and leaves. And she's just kind of looking at her hands with this like broken glass, like petrified flower. And it's the funniest thing because he's like, I'll help you, until Barbara's like, bah! And he's just like, whoa.
Yeah, people are no one is really nice to Susan in this episode.
So part 3, The Escape, begins with Susan leaving the TARDIS and meeting our friend and yours, the Armadillo Aryan. And this guy is just like the perfect specimen of blonde male in an armadillo costume that you could ever meet. And he's a Thal. And Susan's like, wait, weren't you guys supposed to be mutated? And, you know, when compared to the Daleks, in a way, I guess he sort of is. Because he's perfect. It's interesting that this
Look
story...
how awful looking he is.
What?
Look how disgusting he is.
Yeah. It's interesting that this story is about... I mean, it's basically Nazis versus the Aryan race.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Which is the weirdest thing. Like, that is such a weird idea. God bless Terry Nation. So it turns out that Aryan Armadillo, he's the one who left those drugs and was the creepy hand that Susan saw that no one
Sorry about that.
saw. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, that's weird." And this whole time, they have literally like a 5-minute conversation. The entire time, Susan is cowering in fear until he goes, "Do you trust me?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, of course I do." And she's just like totally cool then.
Yeah.
And he takes off his coat, his armadillo coat, and gives it to her. And he is basically wearing, and this is the outfit that all of the male Thals wear. He's wearing like basically like a Jedi outfit in the prequels, only without the gi part. So it's just like the 2 straps that hang down over his skin, his bare body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then leather pants with holes, like strategic holes all the way down his leg, and you know, bro's wearing a thong, and I get it, it's fine. Either that or he's going commando. It's one or the other. But yeah, no underwear lines on this guy. He's wanting to show off some skin. So yeah,
possibly underage girl.
Yeah. So he meets Susan and they become sort of friendly, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go. He gives her some backup drugs because the Daleks want her drugs, and he's like, well, let me give you some more drugs for your friends then, and you hide these drugs and you take those other drugs to the Daleks. And she's like, cool. And so they go off together, and he's gonna like kind of escort her part of the way to the Daleks. And the Daleks, meanwhile, are really excited about finding the Thals. They're really into the idea of finding them and figuring them out. I don't know if they're wanting to like do a compare and contrast or what the deal is there. But we also find out that the Thals, they are agriculturers. What is that? I mean, they're farmers, but yeah, they're farmers, but they're into agriculture. But they were a race built to be warriors. And when the neuron bomb, or whatever the heck they call it, went off and destroyed the planet, they have now started like needing the great rain that comes once every 5 or 6 years. And currently it is 2 years late, which is why everything is garbage on this planet. And the Thals are really hungry because they can't farm anything, because they don't have any water left because there's no rain. and that like the little bit of water they do have, they need it to like, you know, live. And yeah, so they're like scavenging for food and stuff, and this guy is just one guy as a part of like a little Thal like mini tribe who are like out scavenging for food and stuff.
A Reich, if you will.
Right. And Susan comes back to home base, and she's telling Barbara and Ian all about the Daleks, and the doctor wakes up and he's listening and stuff. And yeah, so like now she tells them that basically the Thals want a treaty with the Daleks so that they can get food and supplies and things like that. And they're like, hey, look, we'll you know, let's do a peace treaty, no more war. You give us stuff we need, we'll do what we can for you, everything will be great. And the Daleks are like, okay, this will be great. We're gonna help the Thals. And this other Dalek's like, why would we do that? And he's like, because we will give them a false sense of security, which is so funny. So they want to lull the Thals into a false sense of security so they can destroy them once and for all. So they're basically going to give them whatever they want. And our friend, the Aryan Armadillo, meets a whole clan of Aryan Armadillos, and yeah, and they all are sort of like hanging out around the TARDIS, and the boss, who basically, actually, when they're not in their armadillo coats, they basically look like Khan and his crew.
Oh, yeah.
Khan.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they kind of have that vibe. And there's even like their leader is like even like kind of an older, like suaver guy.
Hello.
And when I say suave, I mean he says lines like, haven't you seen, like he's like referring to like this woman on the crew, and he's like, I know you don't pay attention to her, but or he's like, I know she was just a child when she joined our clan when we began this journey, but that was 4 years ago. And he's like looking at her just like, and now, damn. And it's really messed up.
Now I'm just
It's
imagining.
really creepy.
God, Ricardo Montalban versus the Daleks would have been incredible.
Oh God, I don't even want to think about that.
Hello, you stupid fat monsters.
That's too much. I love that. Yeah, it's funny because like, well, what makes it creepy is that, okay, so she was like, but that was 4 years ago. So if it's 4 years, so if she's 18 and 4 years ago, that means 14. I kind of feel like that's not young enough for them to have been referring to her as a child, which makes me think that she's not any older than like 16.
16, yeah.
Yeah. Which means she was 12 when their journey started, which makes more sense, which makes it so much creepier because they're just like, yeah, she's a woman now. Well, not really. No.
I mean,
she's actually not.
Pocahontas, like 11?
I mean, physically, yes, but mentally, you know, maybe let's wait a while. Come on, guys.
How old is Susan
get it together.
supposed to
Come
be?
on. Put it in your holy leather pants. And yeah. So then the Daleks go into the room and they're like, here, have some water. And they're like, great, now give me the child. And it's like,
Child.
Yeah. So they want Susan and she goes with them. And then there's this really adorable scene where the Daleks are she's sitting on the floor in the middle of like a gang of Daleks, and the Daleks are dictating a peace treaty to her, and she's like writing it down in crayon and just like, okay, and then this, and then this. And also the Daleks apparently understand. I imagine she's not.
We will never be
writing in
truly
English.
free unless those in bondage have freedom as well.
I imagine she's not writing in English. Like she's probably writing in Gallifreyan. So they apparently understand Gallifreyan because they like, what is this last word? Suzanne. And she starts giggling and they shout, stop that noise. Like they just.
What is that?
The sound of Susan's giggles, like just like give them all migraines, and they're stop that noise. It's pretty amazing.
We hate.
And so now they have the peace treaty that they're going to give to the Thals, and Susan goes back to the room, and they break into a fake fight. The four of them break into a fake fight and break the camera that they figure out that they have, because the Daleks say, we're going to use Susan to make a peace treaty because I know that that's what you want is peace with the Thals. And they leave, and then Ian's like, how did they know that we wanted that? And they're like, good point. And then they figure out that there's a security camera in the room, and so they take that out. But what's funny is they do it, and Ian's just like, you think the Daleks bought it? And the doctor's like, oh, absolutely, they bought it. And then you cut to the Daleks, and they're just like, do you really think they did that on accident? And the other doctor's like, of course not. That would be stupid. and so like just immediately they know that it's that they smell the BS, like just immediately. And then somehow Ian and the doctor put together the Daleks are powered on static electricity because the floors are metal. And so that means that they must be running on static electricity. Honestly, I could not follow their logic on this, but it is what it is, I guess. And so then Ian is like, well, if they run on static electricity, then all we need to do is break the current between them and the metal floor. And he looks at the armadillo coat, and he's like, hey, this armadillo coat that Susan came in with, maybe we can use this to break that current. And so they start formulating a plan. Meanwhile, the Thals, they are basically, we just sort of like meet the whole tribe out in this little camp area. And Khan Thal is like, they're like, so do you think, what do you think? Should we trust the Daleks? We got this peace treaty going on. Like, what do you think? Like,
it's written in crayon.
Yeah. Is this a thing we should do? And he's like, well, here's what I think. I think that the Daleks have everything to do with our future. And whatever it is, we should just accept. And they're all like, I think it'd kill us. He's like, we should just accept it. Okay. All right. Whatever you say, Khan.
He's super zen about it.
Look at that face.
Yeah.
Look at that round face.
So then we come back to Barbara, Ian, Susan, and the doctor all setting a trap for a Dalek. The Daleks come with the food. They use the water and the dirt on Susan's shoes to make mud. And they come up with this trap where Ian uses that thing that he took from the doctor, and he puts it under the door as the Dalek comes in, so then the door can't shut when the Dalek leaves. The Dalek comes back in to investigate, and Barbara throws mud in its eye, and then they both jump the Dalek and try to get it to run over the armadillo coat to break the current, the electric current. And meanwhile, while this is happening, the Dalek just keeps repeating, keep away from me, keep away from me, keep away from me, keep away from me. And it's just like spinning around. And it's incredible to watch just like four people just take down this bulky, stupid robot.
Just screaming for personal space.
Yes. It's incredible. No other Daleks come to investigate this Dalek screaming that it's going to die. And then they run it over the armadillo coat, and that breaks the current, and the Dalek sort of like the power of the Dalek like dies. And then they're like, okay, great, that works. So then they start to open up the Dalek, and then the doctor and Ian both see something that they're not super comfortable with, and they tell the ladies to go out front and watch for any other Daleks to show up. And they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do that. And then as soon as they're out of visual range, the doctor and Ian both lift open the thing, and they grab the armadillo coat and use it to lift something out of the Dalek that they didn't want Susan and Barbara to see. And then Ian gets inside of the Dalek, and is a little cramped, and he sort of like tests out the controls and stuff, and he can't figure them out. So then everyone decides they're just going to wheel him around, and somehow they're going to get
like
out.
we get to hear the vocal, the filter of a Dalek voice, but with like emotion, and it's really, really weird.
Yeah, it is super weird.
Because Ian's like, "Oh, hello. Oh, we have to eat." Like, it's like, oh, it just sounds like a Dalek talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they correct him, and they're like, monotone. And he's like, oh, okay, like this. And then they all have a real laugh riot about that.
That's how that stupid alien we just killed talk.
Yeah. And then they start wheeling him out, and there's it's either Barbara or Ian. I forget who it. I think it's Ian. Ian goes like, won't they notice that you guys are obviously pushing me around? The Daleks like, no, of course they won't. And it's like, I mean, they knew that you messed up the camera, dude. Like, come on. And then
I think Steve is dead.
And then as they start making their way down the hallway,
not Steve.
As they start making their way down the hallway, we cut back inside to the armadillo coat, and a little tentacle claw thing reaches out from under it. And we're like, what's that? And that's the end of part 3.
So it's weird looking back at the start of this and knowing that the Daleks were never scary.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like one of those situations where, like, over time, like, oh, well, like Godzilla used to be a bad guy, but now he's like Tokyo's like superhero. You know what I mean? Like, no,
right.
They were always like weird and ridiculous and kind of like vaguely sad and like easy to overpower.
Right.
They're just such a fascinating villain.
They are.
They're like the opposite of velociraptors.
They are. Yeah, I honestly, I just can't believe there's 4 more of these. We've accomplished so much in these 3 episodes that it's crazy to me that there's 4 more after this. But I'm excited to get to them. I don't know. Did Cass, you were really excited about rewatching this? How did it live up to your memory?
It's just as silly as I remember it being, but that's why I love it. Because the Daleks was like the second classic Who story I've ever seen. Yeah. So I watched a Pertwee one before this. I think it was I forget which Pertwee one it was. But so this was like my first like classic Daleks and Hartnell, and it was ridiculous then, and it's just as ridiculous now, and I love it a lot. And it takes forever to get anything going in this. But I think that's just the way Terry Nation writes, because he's like, oh, well, what if they run on static electricity, and what if there's like these beautiful blonde men in the woods, and
they're at war with the fat robot thing.
Yeah.
And what if there's radiation? And he fills his episodes with so many ideas. It's insane.
It's really cool the way like he plays with the TARDIS too. Like, I don't think we ever see the breakfast machine again, but like that's a thing that happened.
Well, because I've always wondered about the kitchen in the TARDIS. Like,
right.
Companions need to eat, and now we know that they eat little protein bar things.
I kind of wish, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's like continuity once again stopping me from having my fun, but I would be interested to see the Daleks and these Aryan Ubermen like fight again.
Yeah. I really like the Thals.
The Thals, like, we hate you. Yeah. We hate you, stupid.
They kind of like, because Genesis of the Daleks takes place like in the midst of that war that they talk about. So like, and don't we, when we see the When the doctor like saves little Davros, like there's Thals, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, those were Thals. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just never look this hunky ever again.
No.
Well, they should.
Yeah.
I want the pants with like the sexy holes down the leg.
Yeah. They all shop at a Hot Topic and a Bohemian store.
Mhm.
They get their bottoms at Hot Topic and their tops at a Bohemian store.
Yeah. Guys, I have a new life goal. I want to hug a Dalek.
That's not hard. You can go, most comic conventions have Daleks.
Yeah.
I want to hug a real one.
Oh, okay. That's going to be a lot more difficult, Nick.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess that wraps us up on our on the first 3 parts of the Daleks. We'll come back for the last 4 episodes next week.
Has there ever been a Doctor Who episode where a group of like school children managed to like tip over a Dalek?
Oh man, wait till Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Oh yeah,
Dalek Tipping City. It's amazing.
Oh, that's the good stuff.
That's all I want is just a bunch of children just like rocking a Dalek back and forth until it falls over.
I don't think it's children, but it's definitely like just a group of dudes just tip over a Dalek.
just soccer hooligans.
Yeah,
Oh, I can't wait.
it's amazing.
Oi!
So
What is
more.
that thing? Kill it! Ah!
Keep away from me.
Keep away from me! Safe space! Safe space!
Oh.
Oh no.
You do not get to touch me.
God. I love the Daleks so much. Oh, they're just so much better than the Cybermen in every conceivable way.
Oh man.
I love
You
the
are
Daleks.
better at dying.
They're so much better at everything. Oh,
Well,
so
the
good.
Dalek, I mean, because the Cybermen aren't funny.
Right.
I think like old school Cybermen are much scarier than.
Yeah, they're scarier for sure. But
Yeah.
you can't have as much fun with them
Yeah, that's true.
as you can Daleks.
And the shame about Cybermen is, I feel like they keep trying to make them scary again, but like they just can't make it work yet.
Well, that's because they over-designed them, I think.
Yeah, because like I think that's what Nightmare in Silver was supposed to be, and like that one just really backfired.
Mhm.
Yeah. Poor Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Hey, he's writing a book about Norse mythology.
I saw that today.
Yes.
It's really crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, it has Mjolnir on the cover.
I know. I saw that, but I didn't realize like I thought he was just like contributing to it. I didn't realize he was writing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Cool. So yeah, we will be back next week with the Daleks part 4 through 7. But where can they find us in the meantime, Nick?
Well, they can find us in a lot of places. They can go to duelinggenre.com. It's kind of our umbrella corporation, but not that umbrella corporation, where we house all of our operations, including, not just the Doctor's Companion, but also Back to the Future Minute, which is on a hiatus for the remainder of the year. But if you have yet to get started on that, now is the perfect time to get caught up. You have plenty of time. We've reviewed both Back to the Future movies, part 1 and 2, 1 minute at a time, featuring Cassandra on like multiple minutes, right?
Yeah. Like 3, I think.
And then also Geek by Night, which is coming back, and we're very proud of. And you can email us at contact@thedoctorscompanion.us. Let us know if you want us to, review Class. What do you guys think? Tweet us at TDC Pod. Follow us at TDC Pod. We post a lot of fun Doctor Who stuff. We talk about Doctor Who news. The Doctor's Companion podcast.tumblr.com, where you can, if you want to draw us like pictures of like Daleks in West Side Story,
Please.
that would be great. Or just Daleks doing anything really. Like, Just Daleks like walking through Manhattan or like throwing fish at each other at like a market. I don't know. Like us on Facebook.
The idea of a Dalek fishmonger.
Sea bass. They're just like tossing it back and forth, and like one wraps it somehow.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
You see, we make our work fun. They're wearing like those bloody aprons.
So
God, we could do this all day. You want to help us out, go to duelinggenre.com/support or check on our donate button or click on merch and buy a Doctor's Companion t-shirt or a Geek by Night t-shirt.